Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 66. I hope that you are well and staying healthy today. And I'm excited to share what's on my mind today. So I've talked in this podcast in various ways about overcoming or moving beyond or shifting negative emotions and ways in which we can handle them so that we can move ourselves back into feelings that we want to be having in our marriages. So that's all very important, and it's so much of the work that we do. I do with clients, but there is another sort of like wing of this work in our marriages is actually learning how to generate the emotions that we want. And sometimes those are very positive. Sometimes they're just more useful emotions, right? In order to create the relationships that we really enjoy and that we really love being in, right? Right. So there are actually emotions that we want to generate on purpose. And we can do that. This is amazing news. We can generate our emotions on purpose. This is truly part of emotional agency. And it's so powerful in our lives and in our marriages, learning how to do this. So today we're going to talk about just one key emotion for helping us create a relationship, a marriage that we really enjoy, right? And how this emotion actually can lead to better communication and better connecting with our partner. And what emotion is that? Drum roll. Curiosity. That's the one. So let me back up before we dive into how to generate it and why we would want to. So here's the thing. All of us see through a filter. We see our partner and other people and ourselves and our relationship not as these things really are, not as they factually are, but through a filter of our own subjective perceptions, opinions, old pre-programmed beliefs, biases, right? And biases. And of course, our shoulds, as I talked about last week, our judgments and our expectations, right? We see through our own filter, our very unique personalized filter. In other words, we don't see clearly. We see distortedly, as if we each wear our very own unique set of glasses when we look out at the world, when we look in at ourselves, when we look at anything, right? When we perceive anything. It's through our own set of lenses that's composed of, associations, pre-programmed everything, right? That I just mentioned. So this actually calls to mind how back in my towards the end of my first marriage, I dabbled in playing the guitar and songwriting. It was really fun for me. I was always a poet, and I sort of shifted into writing songs for a while, and I loved it. It was really fun. I wrote a song that the lyrics of which are coming to my mind, which is, "In the mirror dance of my mind, your reflection is wavering back and forth. I see you big, I see you small. You're distorted like at a carnival." Carnival? Right? So that's kind of like I thought that was a good metaphor or imagery for, how we perceive things outside of ourselves or things inside of ourselves, right? How we perceive our partner and things they say, right? It's like in this sort of distorted mirror, the mirror is like our own mind and personalized filter, right? Hope that's making sense. So here's the thing. When we see through a filter, especially a judgmental one, which having a human brain, we do often do that, or like a negatively biased filter. Again, I call that flaw sight oftentimes. What happens is when we're seeing through that kind of a filter, we close down our capacity to see clearly and to know and love and have a connection with our partner, right? When we're seeing them through our judgmental, negatively biased filter, we close down our capacity for connection and love and understanding, right? So last week, in the episode called Should Pain, we got into this from a kind of different angle, right? Like that episode is what I would consider a precursor to this episode. So, they kind of work in tandem with each other. I do recommend going back and listening to that if you haven't already. It's kind of a first step to this. You can totally listen to today and then go back and listen to that. But there is kind of like, do this week and do this week in these two episodes. And I like you to do the should pain activity first, or at least take that into consideration before you really take on what I'm offering you today. So one of the things I mentioned in that episode last week was that we cannot feel love and judgment at the same time. Right? They're like opposites. But we also cannot feel judgment and curiosity at the same time. Again, they're polar opposites, right? One is wide open, curiosity, and one is super closed down, judgment, constricted, right? And both of these things, curiosity and judgment, they will lead to very different outcomes in your relationship, right? If you come from judgment, you'll get one result, or one experience. If you come from curiosity, you're going to get a totally different result and experience. Curiosity is super powerful in just so many ways to make our marriages and our lives better, right? It really has the power to shift things in really any way that we want to in our lives. And actually today, there's so much possibility with the emotion of curiosity. There's so many ways to use it to shift things in any way we want in our lives that I'm not going to get into all of it today. It would be too much, right? But I would say it's a superpower. In relationships, one of the things it does is curiosity fuels really great listening, really great problem solving, and makes you way less likely to kind of get reactive, to get stuck inside like your hard emotions that generate reactivity, right? So it's an incredibly useful emotion for you to use with your own self and with your partner. So I talked a little bit last episode about how being curious about yourself and about your own mind is really important, right? And I shared about that. Like I talked about what I call sensitive awareness as a piece of that. But there's a lot more to it to be able to use curiosity for understanding yourself better so that you can shift things on purpose, which is really an essential piece of, being able to steward your emotions and being able to create ultimately the feelings and results that you want in your marriage. And if you want to take that aspect of it a little bit further, you can go deeper into that by going to read a post in my blog called Curiosity Equals More Understanding in Your Marriage. I will put the link to that blog post in the show notes. But today I really want to focus on using curiosity with our partners. What's so great about it is that curiosity, again, allows us to, instead of judging and kind of creating a wall between you and him, it allows us to get to know him, right? The real person that he is, not the version of your partner that you think they ought to be, right? Not the version you think he should be. And this, learning them, this getting to know the real them, who they are more and more clear-sightedly, more truly, more deeply, right? This is really part of how we can truly love this real person in front of us, how we can have close, deep intimacy with them. Curiosity opens the gateway to that. Now, also, communication is really one of the biggest areas that benefits from moving out of judgment and into curiosity. In my communication process that I teach, which I call sensitive communication skills and conflict solutions for sensitive couples, my clients learn how to root in curiosity, as well as a couple other important foundational key emotional states, right? But they learn how to root in curiosity as a very primary and basic foundation for being able to communicate clearly and effectively and, navigate and resolve any miscommunication or conflict. And, curiosity is so important in communication because, for one of many reasons, right? When we're curious, we can really hear the other person so much better. We can hear what they're saying, right? When we're in the state of curiosity, we are soft, right? We're receptive. It's like we're not filling the space in our head with our own thoughts, right? It's more like this open space that we can take in what's out there from, right? We can take in our partner's words, our partner's gesture, our partner's tone. Yeah? When we refrain from judging or kind of constricting what we hear from our partner and what we see, and we refrain from kind of making that into making a conclusion about it. In other words, if we don't interpret what our partner is saying very much through our own filter or, our mind, body, heart system, and if we don't make a lot of meaning out of it, and instead we stay in the openness of curiosity, we get a much more full, accurate sense of this person in front of us, right? We stay out of our story, which oftentimes can lead us into pain, reactivity, and defensiveness, right? So when we're in curiosity, we actually allow ourselves to stay out of that pain and the reactivity and the defensiveness, right? In another way of putting this is when we're in curiosity, we can really listen to our partner and ultimately even draw out more of them. We create a safe environment through curiosity, right? And that's an environment in which they can show themselves without being judged. Now, our partners, our husbands, what they really want, most of them, aside from you to be happy, is more time together where things are fun and not stressful. And they really want to feel accepted and admired and respected as they are, for who they are. Curiosity is a gateway to all of this, right? When you're in curiosity, you feel lighter. Things between you are lighter. And it creates an environment, when you're coming from curiosity, it creates an environment of safety, right? An environment in which he's really much more likely to feel safer and therefore, this is fun, to be more vulnerable and open up more with you over time. And what happens then as he opens up and is more vulnerable with you is that you can really start to feel him, right? His tender heart, as we highly sensitive people often so long to do, to be able to do with our partner. As a side note, in coaching, we actually call this, like when we stay in a state of curiosity, this is an essential piece of what we call holding space for our client, right? So you can hold space for your partner. That's one way you can think about it. But when we're doing that, what we're doing is listening with non-judgment and with curiosity, right? We don't insert our personal thoughts and biases and opinions, right? And the result is a very safe space where the client is able to really be themselves, let themselves be seen and known, and feels seen and known and valued and safe. Key ingredient is curiosity. Another way I can kind of illustrate this is, back in college, I met this wonderful person who became one of my most dearest friends, who taught me a lot about curiosity. She was, in so many ways, amazing at curiosity. She asked so many questions. It wasn't like in an annoying way. I can imagine like when your 4-year-old's like, hey, why is this? Why is this? I think that's actually really cute, but it can feel pestery sometimes, right? But she just asked many questions from this very truly curious, kind energy, right? It felt very inviting. In her presence, I felt really seen and cared for, right? As she was showing up from that place, asking those questions. It was so easy for me to open up and be myself with her and just feel valued and seen and cared for with her. And the main ingredient there was her curiosity. And it was paired with kindness, right? And I think whenever I say curiosity, I actually mean there's a sort of kind energy behind it. You can't really have curiosity with judgment, like I said before. So curiosity kind of always implies this open, gentle kind of warmth of heart along with it. Or at least, maybe it's just neutral. But most important is it does not contain any judgment. I also remember how my amazing friend would kind of use her capacity for curiosity against herself when she was dating people. And she noticed they weren't actually as good at curiosity, as good at asking questions and being like having that curious presence with her. And then she would kind of slip out of curiosity and into judgment, right? She'd feel that wall that judgment creates. And really what the result of that would be she'd steal from herself the experience of connecting and connection that she was fostering when she was being curious. So I think that's interesting to notice is it's like I've seen this a lot with us as humans and as highly sensitive people. It's easy to be like develop this cool new skill and then start judging other people for not having it. Right? I mean, that's kind of like counter, especially with curiosity. It's kind of counter. It's using curiosity against ourselves, right? And truly, would that we all could have my friend's skill of curiosity and not judge others for not having it, but rather be models of how it could be done, because my friend was a beautiful model for me, and I'm sure for so many people, and it's impacted me for the last 20 some years. Powerful, powerful stuff. All right. So last week, we talked about doing a judgment cleanse, right, in the Should Pain episode. I hope you tried that out. It's really good stuff. Can change your life forever. Totally worth it. This week, I want to invite you to take the next step and do what I call a curiosity bootcamp week. Or 3, or the rest of your life. Curiosity bootcamp forever. Now, just do it as long as you want. So first I'll tell you a little story about this, and then I'll share how. So one of my amazing clients, she, one of her biggest challenges, as this is the case for many of us, was she kind of put herself in a trap of creating should pain and going to Judgmentville a lot, right? In other words, judgment was a trap that she'd been really stuck in for years. And what it did for her in her marriage was lead to her feeling a lot of contempt. Right? Now, clearly that's not how she wanted to feel in her marriage. So our work together was a lot at first of like judgment cleansing, right? In various ways, the various ways that I work with clients on that. And later we began to move into curiosity boot camp. Right? Now, this was a complete game changer for her. I mean, all of it was. But it was really fun when we got to the point of the curiosity boot camp because it changed so much, not just with her husband, but really in all her relationships and realms of her life, really. Actually, she was a client I actually came up with the term curiosity boot camp with, like on that first call where we were exploring this together. And it came partly out of her love of Mr. Rogers. I don't know if you ever saw, I forget what it's actually called. Maybe it's like In Your Neighborhood or something like that. The sort of movie with Tom Hanks that's kind of recent. It was a beautiful film, and she loved the film. It was very meaningful to her and was very inspired by Mr. Rogers. And so she experimented at coming at life from that same sort of curious and kind attitude that Mr. Rogers has. You got to watch the movie. So, part of the way she conducted her curiosity boot camp is she'd call up the image of Mr. Rogers, or she'd say his name in her mind, right? When she found herself back in Judgmentville and should pain. And if you don't know what should pain is, got to go listen to last week's episode. So one kind of fun story that she shared as I think she made her curiosity boot camp significantly longer than 1 month. And at one point, she somehow found herself, it was really an accident, which I won't get into, with her husband at a political event where people had very polar opposite political views than she did. You know how that might be the case in this current political climate, right? And her, of course, in that kind of environment, which is like the nature of that kind of environment, her old temptation to judge harshly, to go to Judgmentville, right, came out. But because she was doing curiosity boot camp, she chose to stay in curiosity and fascination. I'll talk a little more about fascination in a minute. She chose that for herself. So in all of her conversations with the folks there, she kept thinking, I wonder where this person's thinking is coming from. Yeah, that's a curiosity thought, which I'll tell you more about in a minute too. And so she was really able to keep herself out of should pain and really the harsh emotions that come from judgment. And what she did for herself was allow herself to stay in that feeling space of openness more than not. Maybe not the 100% of the time, but a lot more than she would have without practicing curiosity, choosing curiosity, right? And so the result was that she actually had a time that she described as amusing and light. Yeah? She had interesting and fascinating conversations where she connected more genuinely to people very different from her. Yeah? And her experience was one of feeling really good about herself, right? So net positive experience, more positive emotion that could have been a very negative emotion experience. Yeah? And what was kind of fun for her too was later one of the people there, the attendants, is that the right word? Not an attendant, but participants, yeah, told her husband how he just loved his wife. She got a kick out of that. All right. So, boot camp, curiosity boot camp. How do you do it? The main things that I want you to start with to get yourself into a state of curiosity is to use a thought to generate it or ask a great question of yourself, right? The point, of course, is to feel the emotion of curiosity. That's what it is. It's an emotion. And any emotion, if you've been listening to my podcast, you will understand that emotions are fuel that lead to how we show up in the world, how we act, and the results we get, which means like how we interact with our partner, what questions we ask, how we communicate, right? And ultimately how the communication and interactions go and what the result of them is. So the real ticket is to get in the energy or the emotion of curiosity, and good questions, effective communication will naturally flow from there. So I'd like to offer you some thoughts that you can choose to think on purpose in order to generate the feeling of curiosity, and also some questions that you can ask yourself that will do the same thing. And I want you to know, like, these thoughts and these questions that I'm going to offer, there's a million of them. There's an unlimited amount of them available to you. You can totally use your own. I'm just going to give you some suggestions. So here are some thoughts you can use to get into the state of curiosity. I'm curious to hear what he says. I'm curious to see where this goes. And just think that thought. Try that thought on now like you're trying on a sweater, and notice what it creates for you. Notice if it brings you into the feeling state of curiosity. I like to use a collection of thoughts that I call wonder thoughts. And this sounds like this. I wonder how we will resolve this issue. I wonder what's going on for him around this issue. I wonder what he's thinking. I wonder how he's interpreting my words or his boss's comment, right? I wonder what he wants. I wonder what's going on for him that he would act this way or say this thing or do this thing. Yeah? So you're getting the idea. I wonder. Now, I want to pause here before I give you the questions that you can ask yourself, and just share that you can actually take curiosity further into fascination, right? Into the feeling of fascination, which is really fun, by thinking thoughts like, ooh, isn't it so interesting how he thinks? Or like, wow, I want to hear more of what's going on in that interesting brain of his. Or simply, it's so fascinating how he sees things or how he's acting about this. His mind is a fascinating place. Like, thinking thoughts like that to me is like, oh, it puts me almost like fascination, like kind of the state of wonder, like, ooh, right? Which is so fun. Such a fun place to be. So much better than judgment or a lot of other places we can go in our relationships. All right, here are some questions you could try on. Who is this man really? How is this landing for him, right? If we're thinking of something we said, how's this landing for him? Is he taking this how I meant it? How can I say it in a way he understands better? What does he mean by this? I kind of like this question. What are the filters he's interpreting things through? What are his personal filters? How would love see him? This is such a good one. Like, if you're having dinner together and like maybe things are like quiet or you're not having a great time together, you can ask this question of yourself. How would love see him? Boing, curiosity. Be really interesting to try that one on. Another good question is, how can I really see him right now? So there's a lot more to using powerful questions to come up with solutions, to move things in a positive direction. But some of that's really for another time. Today, we're really aiming to simply get into the emotion of curiosity, right? Or the emotion of intrigued or fascinated or wonder, right? So let me kind of break it down into the simple directions. That's 3 simple steps to this boot camp of curiosity, right? So the first step is think wonder thoughts and ask yourself wonder questions, right? So all of the thoughts and questions that I just offered you as examples or possibilities to try on, right? So use them to move yourself into the state of curiosity, right? Second step, feel that curiosity that these thoughts and questions generate. Yeah. Step 3, allow your action to come from there. Right? And so a question might be here, like, when you're curious, how do you show up? What are you compelled to do? What questions sort of naturally flow into your mind? Right? When you're curious, allow yourself to kind of let your instinctive action come from there. I want to share a quick little example of what this might look like. For me, when I think, I wonder what he means by XYZ, like something that he said, I, of course, feel curious. And then what can naturally flow from there from me is asking him a question or saying, help me understand what you mean. Yeah? Or, this is what I'm hearing. Is that what you meant? Right? Or maybe I will just simply listen more deeply and attentively as he keeps talking. Right? But that comes from the question, I wonder what he means by this. Or that's kind of a thought, right? I wonder what he means by this. And getting into that state of feeling curious, right? Either way, if I say one of those things or I just listen deeply and attentively, I'm going to learn something, get to know him, understand what he's trying to say, create an environment where he feels cared for, right? Attended to, accepted, that I'm interested. See what I'm saying? In other words, I'm going to create a much more positive result than if I'm jumping to conclusions or judging really fast, right? And I think this leads me to my next point is that the key with curiosity, especially in interactions with our partner, is really to stay more in the openness. Like stay in the question, the openness of it, the emotion of the curiosity, right? Of curiosity, instead of kind of letting your brain kind of close up and kind of want to make a conclusion or creating an answer for the question that you've posed in your own mind. What I mean by that is like, if I sort of think the thought, I wonder what he means when he says XYZ, right? I could quickly jump out of the emotion of curiosity and by thinking a thought that's like, he means I'm a jerk, right? By letting my brain interpret it the way my brain might want to, or like naturally through my negatively biased filter. Yeah? So the key is to stay in the openness of curiosity. And then really see what comes through you from there. So that's how you do the curiosity boot camp. And you can do that as much or as little as you want as you go about your day. It can be with strangers, coworkers, kids, but especially focus it on your time with your partner. So, are you wondering where this will lead you in your marriage, even just for this week? Excellent. It's exactly what I want. Stay curious and go explore. Go explore what it will lead to, what it will bring about in your marriage. Be on the lookout for noticing how this curiosity impacts your communication and your capacity to connect with your partner. For me and my clients, it always brings more openness, more understanding, more acceptance, more respect, and therefore intimacy and what I think of as tender connection. And really a capacity for coming up with, solutions to problems and ultimately a sense of the relationship moving forward in a positive direction. I'm so curious to hear how this goes for you. And again, I want to remind you to, if you want a little bit like some of these questions written down and you want to take this just a little bit further, I totally recommend that you check out the blog that I mentioned, the blog post that I mentioned earlier. You can find the link for that at the show notes. And I do want to make sure I share that for those of you who want to take this further, for those of you who know that you have some room to grow, your marriage has some room for improvement in the areas of feeling connected and close and communicating well, I do want to share that in my one-on-one coaching container, I actually lay out a whole process for communicating in a way that does connect and overcomes conflict sensitively with closeness as the result. I call it sensitive communication skills and conflict solutions for sensitive couples. And as part of this, my clients learn to access, kind of like we've been talking about, but in a deeper way, that state of being that really makes great communication come totally naturally, right? With connection, with deep love, with a sense of mutual support as the result. And of course, you have to be a client to get access to this whole process. And the first step to becoming my client is to schedule a free consult call. To do so, head to the show notes or go to www.lifeisworthloving.com and hit the Work With Me tab, and it will tell you what to do. And in the meantime, have fun being curious and be